All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Brian Daner. I'll be going through System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2012 today. A lot of great new features. We're going to kind of fly through it because there's so much new in this technology. It's almost impossible to get it all in within the hour. So our basic agenda today is going to be going over the new features, do a quick demo of the VMM console, additional information, and as I mentioned, we have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Basically, what are the new features in VMM? It's not just virtual machines anymore. The biggest shift in Virtual Machine Manager is a change from managing virtual machines to managing the entire virtualized data center. The shift is so dramatic that System Center Data Center Manager could be a more appropriate name. VMM can communicate with brand new machines with no OSs installed, do bare metal installations, and then configure them in a Hyper-V cluster, as well as talk directly to your SAN storage. This system becomes, private cloud inside of VMM that can abstract host, storage, networking into a unified pool of computing resources. Add this the ability to use server app-v to deploy applications to VMM, as well as SQL Server profiles to deploy customized database servers, along with dynamic power and optimization features. As you can see, they kind of categorize the new features. We have Fabric and Services. We're going to go over Core Fabric Management, Resource Optimization, Infrastructure Enhancement, Cloud Management, and Service Management. First thing we'll go over is the Core Fabric Management features. This gives you the ability to, manage all of your basically hardware resources, bare metal provisioning, network and storage management, and obviously manage multiple hypervisors, which by looking at the poll question, we do have, VMware, Hyper-V, and Citrix are all represented here. Yeah, Fabric Management, and VMM refers to all the infrastructure pieces that are necessary to host virtual machines. Fabric Management you can build upon for clouds using compute resources, network, and storage resources. It contains physical servers, multiple hypervisors are supported, VMware, Zen Server, and Hyper-V, obviously. You can do server hardware management, define logical networks, do storage provisioning, basically all kinds of, anything to do with the physical resources of your virtualized data center, you can manage and they put it into this Fabric Management component. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just about, managing your virtual machines. This is now a way to manage the entire VM host lifecycle, everywhere from, bare metal provisioning using out-of-band management, BMC controllers, operating system deployment. You can provision your operating system to Hyper-V onto a bare metal machines, and you can actually deploy a complete cluster solution straight from bare metal. No more having to go in, log into each server, build your clusters, and then add it into Virtual Machine Manager. Now it's all done within the VMM console. Obviously, once you get deployed, there's a way to you can add hosts to it, expand your clusters, monitor the resources, and also delete resources as needed as the system ends end of life or usefulness. Talk about network management. The logical network system allows management of addresses of Windows-based virtual machines on all three supported hypervisor environments. Both IP4 and IP6 addresses are supported, but not in the same address pool. In VMM 2012, a logical network with one or more logical definitions are grouped together IP subnets and VLANs to simplify network management. Typical networks would be a back-end, a front-end, or a management, or even a backup network. When you provision a host in VMM, you associate with a logical network that automatically receives a fixed IP address and MAC address. Logical networks can span geographies with one or more logical network definitions for each location. Example, you can have the same logical network framework for 2 different locations, Houston, London, or wherever. Within this, an administrator can create an IP address range with a static set, reserve set. When the VM is deleted or migrated, the IP is then checked back in. Great way for managing your IP resources. This also applies to MAC addresses as well. Storage management. VMM can discover and provision remote storage on arrays in the console, and available storage can be classified. For example, an 8 gig fiber channel SAN connection could be called platinum, whereas slower iSCSI storage could be known as silver. VMM uses what's called the Storage Management Initiative specification, SMIS, to communicate with external arrays, and a provider for your SAN vendor needs to be installed to the server to unlock that functionality. Once that communication is established, you can create logical units, allocate them to host groups, and then assign them to individual hosts or to cluster as clustered shared volumes. Currently, most of the major SAN manufacturers support this specification. Storage groups are also a new concept on this. They bring together the host initiators, target ports, and logical units. The SAN array integration is only available for Hyper-V hosts. Storage for VMware and Xen server hosts has to be provisioned outside of VMM. Next, we're going into the resource optimization features. This covers power optimization, the ability to schedule power savings, to use the right number of hosts to run your workloads, Pro integration with System Center Operations Manager, and dynamic optimization, which will proactively balance the load of the VMs across the cluster. Obviously, the goal when placing a virtual machine to ensure that the new host selected meets the requirements uses the star rating. You've seen that before if you've used the VMM 2008 console. Obviously, the goal is to have a 5 or a 4-star rating. Dynamic optimization does not require the Pro Pack, although you can still use Manager Pro Pack for integration. Power optimization will actually monitor the server to find a server is underutilized. It can power that server, and you can use those resources for something else. Dynamic optimization is used to automatically balance the load within a cluster. It has a manual mode where you get a recommendation, or you can do it automatically. Requirements to do dynamic optimization, you have to have VMM, cluster server, and C volumes configured. It will keep your cluster balanced for resources. It will do live migration to avoid downtime, and does not require Ops Manager, does it all within the console, and it will support Hyper, VMware, Citrix, and Citrix Xen server clusters. It will optimize for CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network according to whatever thresholds you provision it for. Power optimization. The main goal of power optimization is to bring down cluster nodes in case of optimization. It does require that dynamic optimization be configured. Basically, it monitors the same resource as VO. It's just an extra component you can put on there if power management is a big concern in your data center. It will move the host before piling off. It moves all the virtual machines off of the host and make sure everything is good to go before it shuts down. Automatically shut down your server if there's still a resource running on it. If the built monitoring for operations, OpsMan and the integration is not enough for your environment, we now, through SCVMM, they have vital signs for Hyper-V. Slide, you can see it will pull in the historical data from operator, pull in alerts and incidents from both operations manager and service manager, present real-time performance data in the graph as historical data and alerts and incidents. Having all of this context allows for comparisons of current real-time performance versus normal performance in the last few days or week. Quick identification of root cause, alerts, incidents leading into performance spikes, and also before and after performance analysis in the case of changes from the service manager. And in the bottom half of this, it will show the vital sign percents for Hyper-V, performance indicators for virtual machines, but also provides the ability to dive virtual machines and better identify the source of performance problems. Knowledge of the application is key. We provide this detailed level of information for server, Exchange server, and Windows server. Most Hyper-V solutions stop at the Hyper host and cannot provide level of detail in terms of what's happening inside. Additionally, when the customer purchases vital signs for Hyper-V, SCVMM will provide Windows SQL and Exchange dashboards for all virtual machines on that Hyper-V host for free. Many customers have expressed that the SCVMM management pack for Hyper-V that's provided by Microsoft is a bit light. To remedy that, SCVMM has built in a management pack that extends the Microsoft management pack to provide additional rules, monitors, and dashboards to enhance the level of Hyper-V monitoring available in SCVMM. This management pack is provided for free also when vital signs for Hyper-V dashboard is purchased. All right, now we're going to cover the infrastructure enhancements for SCVMM 2012. They involve new features of high available server, update management, and PowerShell. PowerShell, fully PowerShell 2.0 compatible. They've added a number of available PowerShell commandlets, have gone from about 182 to 400. It has a high available VMM, making it cluster aware if it's ran on a Windows failover cluster. And updates where patching the cluster is an orchestrated manner to make cluster quorum. It's basically a way of keeping everything running while you're doing patch management. I mentioned within the VMM console, you now have the ability to create your clusters. You can use it from an existing machine. You can add and remove different hypervisors on the VMM console. It is a wizard-based experience, and it runs the full cluster validation test for you, full cluster-wide virtual networking, and it is only for Windows 2008 R2 Hyper-V host and a trusted domain. Creating it from the console. If you're integrating in VM Citrix, you will have to create it within those applications. The management features of it, you can add, remove cluster nodes and disks and networks, and you can uncluster hosts and manage them back as standalone hosts. One of the big new features is a highly available VMM server. This was majorly lacking in the previous version. The only way to get a semblance of high availability was you had to make, VMM server a virtual machine and put it on a Windows, and then it would, obviously go to whatever active node was on the cluster. Now they've made the application cluster aware. It's an active passive cluster directly to the cluster name, not the host name. And actually takes everything into the high availability enterprise level. One of the new features is on the key management. it actually will store the server keys and active. So when you are doing a high available VMM server, you have the main administrator or somebody create a location for your keys. That way, all your key management is available in the event that node fails over. Obviously, when you're creating this in a cluster, you want to follow best practices. You should put your VMM database on a high available SQL server. Otherwise, that kind of defeats the purpose of having high available for your VMM server. And also ensure all your libraries on a high available file server. SCVMM has a method to remediate Hyper-V host and cluster. It manages this task from end to end, and everything within the console. It does not require any third-party tools or anything extra like System Orchestrator. Basically put them in maintenance mode, install missing updates based on baselines assigned, out of maintenance mode, and it'll go to the next node and repeat. Say you have a cluster of virtualization hosts running several highly available machines using live migration or even vMotion, but now you need to install updates to your host. VMM automates the process by performing the updates in a process that moves around the view, installs the updates, restarts the host, and eventually rebalancing, similar to DRS-style load balancing in VMware, your VM workloads and among the host. All this doing with absolutely zero time for your virtual machines and the services they're providing. A great way of managing that. You don't have to wait night when everybody's off the servers to do your patching. Just move them over to the other nodes, do your updates, and move forward. I'm going to go into the cloud management capabilities for VMM. It gives you the ability to manage everything in a private cloud environment. Basically put all your network storage resources in the private clouds, to delegate access to private clouds with control of capacity capabilities and quotas. Also, you can enable self-service use for application administrator to author, deploy, manage, or even decode applications in the private cloud space. Basically, a private cloud abstraction tools and opaque usage model for services and virtual machine management. It consists of fabric resources, storage and network, and delegation of cell calls, all into a layer that the end user is totally, invisible of what's going on behind the scenes. They just, manage cloud service. Private cloud is provisioned and managed services by an organization. The cloud is deployed using an organization to take advantage of the cloud model. Using VMM 2012, organization can manage the cloud definition, access to the cloud, underlying physical resources. What VMM allows you is it can oversubscribe beyond the fabric capacity. VM allows you to shape the range for processors, disks, networks, everything. As you can see, you can shape the limits, and it allows you to basically do more within the limits of your virtual environment. Some of the dimensions you can manage, virtual CPUs, memory storage, number of deployed virtual machines, and you can also have some quotas to support, points for, quota points in Virtual Machine Manager 2008 R2. this is some of the profiles and capacities. Who can do what within VMM? You can have, admin who has everything scope, cannot be modified, administrative action, and can use the VMM console or PowerShell console. You can make a host group in clouds, delegated admin or read-only administrator, set up Fabric, create a cloud and assign it to self-service users, and use VMM console or PowerShell to create this also. Then you have just the self-service user. They can deploy and services. They can author the templates, share resources, use portal and PowerShell, and actions can be revoked easily from the administrator. And you can also set quotas as a per user limit for a particular user. As I mentioned, basically it's a per user limit on the user role. Two types of quotas that it provides you are shared, and basically is the total usage of all members within that user role, and then per user, so usage with each member of the user role. Quota is only for virtual machines on a host, not in the library, and pretty much the same, managed, and I have the other resources, all your physical resources, memory, number of virtual machines. Sources that can be shared are, obviously you can share a virtual machine, a VM template. Services can be shared out, and also the service template. Profiles, you have a hardware profile, guest OS profile, and now you have application profiles, and the addition of a SQL profile. This allows you to, basically put everything together and present everything as a service. Which is what we're into now. So now you have, basically you've done management on your cloud, and now you're ready to present a service. This is where define the service templates, scale out the number of virtual machines in a service, the performance monitoring, everything through the service management within that cloud. In VMM terms, a cloud provides the following characteristics: service to administrators, to delegate provisioning on the clouds, resource and opacity, because users have no knowledge of the underlying physical hardware. It's elastic and it's easy to add resources and increase capacity. And private clouds can contain hosts from all three providers: VMware, XenServer, and Hyper-V. Can create a VMM cloud from a VMware resource pool also. Some of the main applications use this are web apps, and database applications. Services are always applied by changing the service template. And to the service template. Service template contains all the settings for virtual machines that work together in one or more tiers, and can also contain load balancers and other hardware features. This whole service can then be deployed in one fell swoop, and if the load increases in the future, service can be scaled out with additional virtual machines on. If changes need to be made to the service, they can be served in image mode, where each virtual machine is updated with a new image, or conventional mode, where only the applicable changes are applied. This is all done within the service template. Great example is you have a remote desktop service, remote desktop farm applied as a service, and you need to update you update your template, and it modifies things within that service. The process is to update the service. You update the service template, make the required changes, then update the service by applying the template to all deployed instances of that service running in the cloud. You can configure upgrade domains, which ensures application availability while it's being serviced, so it will actually might move the resources. It gives you regular updating without having to suffer any downtime for the service, and it allows you to update based on instead of you can update on multiple machines instead of updating each individually. Now, another addition is service lifecycle management. The administrator can define service templates using any number of templates and any additional, add additional applications. A great example is this: a line of business application can have 1 to 3 web tier servers, 1 to 2 application tier servers, 1 database server, all running as a service. Using the template, the administrator can quickly deploy a new instance of application from the console by using the deploy service action. Deploy service wizard, another wizard in there, will search for available host or cloud and use an intelligent placement feature. We'll select the best host for deployment and deploy the application components based on the template. If you haven't noticed, there's a common theme here. Now on servicing in the cloud is based upon template. So now we're going to do a quick look at the new Virtual Machine Manager console. Let me switch my server here. If you're someone like me and you've worked in previous version of Virtual Machine Manager, you'll notice the console is quite a bit different. I think VM changed or will change in its next release more than any of the other systems. It does so much more than the 2008 product. They've also changed the look and feel of it to basically be consistent with the rest of the new System Center products that are going to be coming out this year. I first used it. It took a little bit of getting used to, just because I was used to 2008. But once you get in here and work with it, it becomes pretty easy to find your way around it inside the console. The main addition, obviously, is you see the ability to deploy clouds directly from within the console. You still have your live server. You have now this fabric management feature built, and we'll switch to that. So fabric management, you have the ability to control all the networking features, create logical networks, pools, load balancers, and your VIP templates. The VIP templates are virtual IP templates that are used installing load balancers. It comes with the default load balancer built in from Microsoft, or you can add other load balancers that need to be integrated in, such as like F5, for example. And it gives you a review of the networks. Our network, it's pretty straightforward. We haven't done a lot of customization this yet, but you can, shows you where to manage all the network resources, all the logical networks within, this pane. And let's go back up to the VM services view, and similar to the old console. The overview screen has changed a lot. It gives you information, services for your virtual machines and host, memory, network, power management features, which we have disabled right now. And if you scroll down, obviously gives us insight on all of our, network storage, the main, components of your virtualized environment. Change to the, to virtual machines, and it'll listing of all the virtual machines we have, and typical, features of CVMM 2008. You can manage all of your machine resources with this. Looks up, if you've worked in VMM, that should look pretty similar. It's basically the same as 2008. You manage the resources of the machine. Bringing up the properties here. Someday. And this is all look familiar. Hardware configurations, checkpoint, in various. You now have quota points. This is where you can assign, self-service user, specifically the number of points allowed towards the machine quota we mentioned earlier. And here's where you can exclude the virtual machine from any optimization actions. One of the cool new features is being able to update the Hyper-V host. That is done, using a WSS server. You connect it to a virtual machine manager, and it's done with baseline security updates. You can do updates, straight updates, or for critical updates, which default, or you can create your own custom baseline for, virtual machines. And configuring is pretty just, properties, go to updates, click add, and it will scan your WSUS server for any new updates. Which is implemented here. There we go. So there we show all the new updates that can be added to our baseline. And then once you select the updates, you can assign a scope to it. You can do it to all of your hosts. You can do it to just your library servers, update server, or just the VMM server itself. Have all of your updates selected, back into the fabric management. Just a minute here, and then go to servers, expand that, and we do a compliance, and we can view the compliance for each of those servers. Right now, these are compliance scans, so they're all coming up a compliance status of unknown. Once the compliance scan is completed, then choose the remediate option, and then go ahead and apply all of our updates to the virtual host or the virtual clusters. Like I mentioned earlier, when you deploy the updates to the cluster, it moves the virtual machines and will update service one node at a time. Now let's go into basically kind of go over the abilities you can do with a cloud service. You can create a template, or you can view existing template. Everything, any service you create within, VMM is done through, a service. We're going to use an existing one here, and we're going to open up the debug, or the designer view. Sorry. This shows a 3 service. Each of these tiers, actually this is the 4 tier. We can make a tier for front-end servers, application server, and then also it has a SQL machine tier. The easiest way to make these is you add, and if you have an existing virtual machine template, you basically add that into existing service. You can go browse, and we're going to choose one we have created already. And we can, basically give us options. And then, if you don't want it in there, just delete it. Basically, when you deploy everything as a service, it'll take all these machine tiers and deploy that machine to all of those machines to your host or host group you decide. You can also have a private cloud created. You can deploy that service directly to the cloud, and it will do all of the behind the scenes work. Once you have everything created, you're good to This is pretty much, your Windows automated install. Gives you all the options in the system. You can add applications. You can add features and roles to your server, to each one of these service tiers. And all that through the. We're not going to change this here. There is a new template wizard. It gives you the option to create a single, dual, or 3 tiers. You can expand on it and add whatever you need. Also, where you can put in load balancers if you're have one of your tiers is using the load balancing feature.
Hey, Brian, it's Ron. Just a quick time check. We're down to about 10 minutes left.
Okay. Well, this is probably the last thing I'm going to go over is creating the cloud. I'm not going to actually go into detail because we could spend an hour just on creating and private clouds. But this shows that the cloud feature is, and you can deploy your cloud directly within Virtual Machine Manager. Aim for it. And basically you can choose all hosts or just specific host. You can use VMware resource pools. One network rated, but if you have multiple logical networks, here's where you provision that. We're going to use our default load balancer. And we don't have any VIP profiles. Here's, basically you can select the storage classification cloud. I mentioned earlier, all the storage management features. You can push your storage up to your cloud, and it manages, and balances everything accordingly. We'll library server, and where you define different capacities. You can put quota points, and you can put limits on how many virtual machines you want run this cloud. And this basically shows what is the underlying hypervisor. Are we going to be running this on the ESX or Zen servers? And then last but not least, summary. And deploying multiple clouds, you can go in, save your PowerShell script and use that over and over. So that's, some of the new features of the console. And we'll go back. Let me switch screens here. Let's go over what is no longer supported in VMM. It no longer comes with SQL Server Express. For the Virtual Machine Manager data, you have to use a standalone full version of Microsoft. Virtual machine hosts that are running Virtual 2005 are no longer supported. And virtual machine running VMware ESX or ESXi 3.0 no longer supported either. And obviously, what the main thing on this presentation is, all the new infrastructure management features within Virtual Machine Manager. It does more than manage your virtual machines. It actually, complete virtualized data center management application, which includes, managing your fabric resources to provision and manage your private clouds, and basically, take everything as a service you're presenting to the end users and manage them within Virtual Machine Manager. Microsoft has joined VMware and the Gartner Leadership Quadrant for server virtualization. One concern when that happened was, Microsoft was lacking in higher level management automation tools. I believe 2012 will alleviate that concern and will provide an excellent foundation for virtualized data center and private cloud management.
First question, when the VMs are rebalanced, so this is going back to the demo, when the VMs are rebalanced, will they be balanced to the preferred owners?
If you have that configured, it will. That's, within Windows clustering, you can set those features on, what virtual or what cluster resources will automatically go to when the cluster is brought back online. But yeah, that's done within Windows clustering. So it will to a preferred owner if it's configured.
All right. I will move on to the next poll question. And by all means, if there are follow-on questions, please go ahead and enter those at any time as well. So this is a longer question, but can you explain in more detail the load balancer? How can it be used if you have a hardware load balancer? Does it balance the load on a service based on the workload of the virtual machines that service uses?
Correct. A load balancer is assigned to a server or a service within, virtual machine management. Say for example, if you have a terminal server farm or remote desktop services farm. Sorry. And so you do that within your virtualized environment. You can have, a dedicated NIC on each Hyper-V or hypervisor host, and then have that load balancer on there. It does operate independently of a hardware load balancer. This is basically, designed to work within your Hyper-V cluster or cloud service. So if you're using a hardware load balancer, to manage, Hyper-V or a service, it's going to hit everything at the host level, where this load balances things within the service level, or as that service is to a cloud resource.
All right.
So hope that elaborates on that one.
I'll just keep plugging away through a couple more here until we get to till we run out of time or we start losing folks. Will VMM 2012 support ESX 5.0?
Yes. It just drops the 3.0 support.
All right, so it does support 5, not 3.
Yes, right.
Okay.
And they just dropped the support for V3.
All right. Let's see. Is management of vSphere 5 supported?
It does have a option to integrate the vSphere with the VMM console. It does not do all the features that vSphere will do for the ESX host, but it will do quite a large sum of your virtualization management. It'll do integrations, P2V processes, but some of them are advanced features it will not.
All right. Maybe one or two more here. Are there any plans to make VMM multi-host single database? We need to have a VMM server in multiple cities that access the same database.
Technically, you could probably do that using a geo cluster. VMM, if that cluster, can see the same database. Right now, it's set up as a high-level single database application. You will not be able to use multiple databases. So both, if you have VMM set up on a geo cluster, so to speak, they would have to look at the database. Now, keep in mind, VMM console is not active-active. It is an active-passive solution. So if you have your VMM, server on a, say a multi-node Windows cluster that spans the WAN and has a host at like a DR site, and your SQL database is sitting on a SQL cluster that spans the WAN and is able to fail over to a SQL server at a DR site, then technically that would be a supported solution. You just have to coordinate over of both your Windows cluster supporting the server running virtual machine manager and your SQL server.
All right. There are a few others here I don't think we're going to get time to get to. I'll ask this next one as the last one because I think it's probably a fairly brief answer. But when is SCVMM 2012 due to be released?
That's $1 million question. It is in release candidate right now. You can download it. Guessing somewhere around Q2. Microsoft is basically done this great marketing campaign, and they're releasing all of the System Center products as one package. It's the first time ever they've included everything and had the same year release on all the System Center products. So my guess is Q2 time frame. My guess is probably estimate. You'll probably announce MMS time frame. VMM, I worked since last February when it was in beta, and it's been for a while. It's very strong. I actually have customer using it in production, the release candidate version, without any issues. So it's been around for a while. They've had a chance to debug. It's pretty stable. One caveat is if you're not in a Microsoft TAP program, will not support going from release candidate to RT. Only TAP customers get that feature.
All right.
Hope that answered the question.
I think so. All right, so we are now officially over time, and we've started to lose folks. So if you have submitted a question and we didn't get a chance to answer it, we will follow up with written responses to all of the questions. And as I mentioned earlier, a recording of the webinar will be online in the next couple of days. And if you like, we can even arrange to get you copies of the slides. So with that, I think we're ready to wrap up. Brian, did you have any closing comments, or Rob, or are we good to go?
I'm good to go. I appreciate everyone spending the last hour with us.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time this afternoon, and we'll be in touch with the next webinar in our editorial calendar here shortly. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and shut the webinar down now.